Welcome. My name is Niel, and I am a man who does love the guitar. And I've spent many hours critically thinking about it and discovering and observing. And I am eager, I'm excited to launch this online lesson studio. And hopefully this is a place where we can connect and I can share with you the very best information that I have. This culmination of epiphanies and aha moments over the years, and articulate what it is that I think are the load-bearing walls behind the craft that I'm attempting to construct. You know, I am not at the top of the mountain, but I am higher up the mountain than I've ever been before. And as I look out and I see, what I couldn't see from underneath, I'm looking and I see some trails and so forth. I'm like, it seems like there might be some better paths up here than the one I took. And so if I could go back and talk to my young self, just holding this thing, and say, hey, I think you should focus on this. This information that I'll be putting in this lesson studio and in the toolkit, in the tool bag, as I'm calling it, is that information. I remember listening to Glenn Gould play the well-tempered clavier. And when I listened to that, I heard Bach's ferocious and amazing sequences. And they were played with amazing dexterity and skill and ability. And I know that Bach was capable of improvising those things. All the great composers and instrumentalists of the previous eras were great improvisers, and I wanted that badly. Like it was so fluorescent to my mind that it propelled me to go about building the tools that would chip away at those abilities. And so that's really what this is a toolkit, a tool bag. I'm calling it the articulatable toolkit, and these are the things that, as I gain perspective to give good articulation of them, I develop the lessons for. And so, when I was a child, I remember going out into my dad's shop and seeing him make a tool. Like he'd be fashioning some tool out there. He'd be melting or bending some metal around on a vise. And I would inquire. And he'd be making something that was in his imagination that there was no tool at the local hardware store to go get. So he would build them. And so I've discovered that I'm a lot like him on this fretboard, is when there's something in my mind, in my imagination that I'm going for, I then go to the fretboard and build some tool that will help me bring it about. And so my visualization process has led me to something that I call the Shapo. So this Shapo, as I call it, has been foundational for me in both my fretboard visualization and the way that I move on the fretboard. I think that I can trace two reasons why I've experienced success with it. The first of which is that a Shapo is a triad. The Shapos are merely the triads, but a particular way that I play them with my hands. And I know many musicians that would sign off or even proclaim the truth that the triad is king. We have a tonal system in which the triad is its fundamental unit. And so by steeping this information deep in our fretboard understanding and knowledge, we get a technique that is soaked in musical nutrition. So the second reason I believe is that the Shapo has delivered for me a system of consistency in which it's provided a framework for my hands to do the same thing and anticipate the same thing from one another over and over again. And so that produces a well-oiled and fluid motion. And it's built on simplicity. I am convinced that altogether, becoming a virtuoso is dependent upon dedication of the fundamentals. And so this Shapo has kind of ushered me down that road of dedication to the fundamentals. I have two methods of motion built on this Shapo. The first of which is the butterfly system. If I were to illustrate that. So it's a whimsical and fluttering, even turbulent at times sound. The other system, I call it the Triad tool, and it is really designed to host a melody. In its lesson, I'll go into the philosophical implications and the amazing epiphany that I had. It took me years to find this sound. And then I was shown. But what it is, in essence, is if I could just illustrate it, it's to host a melody. So if I think, I can have a melody, but I host a fabric or rhythmic nuances underneath it. And so that's what the Triad tool does, it's like a pedal tone almost, but a triad is the thing you go back to all the time. You do something, then you play a triad. You do something, then you play a triad. If I play this, but I put a triad in between everything I do. And that can branch out into more complex things. But those two methods, those two systems of motion, the butterfly and the Triad tool, I will have multiple lessons on those topics. And I'll also be releasing what I call Nugget Lessons, which is my articulation of some nugget that has really been of value to me, something that has helped bear fruit in my playing. And it's not part of a bigger system, but just kind of an a la carte bit of information. I'll release those. And then also my methods of harmonizing. I remember one day I heard Tommy Emmanuel speak, and he was talking about the freedom of just considering a melody, like only thinking of the melody. And I was like, I want that. Like when I love to just hold the guitar and play beautiful songs and improvise them and harmonize them at will, maybe differently each time. I'm not like I'm reciting a poem, but I'm telling a story free to articulate with nuances that may be different each time. I believe that's freedom, linguistically anyway. If anything that you hear interests you, I encourage you to go look at the videos, Meet the Shapos, and the video concerning the amazing diatonic collection, the scales, and maybe even the video concerning their relationships. I will also be releasing what I call Sounds for the Sound Mind. And this is where I just play themes and melodies the most beautiful way I know how. And I select those themes particularly because I believe them to hold the most precious and powerful message that exists, the gospel of Jesus Christ. I believe music to be a delightful companion and an encouraging agent in my life. And I hope that it can be so for you too. Thank you. God bless you.